Hi guys. I guess there's a kind of natural progression from our talks about multidimensional healing and the understanding of the energetic self, the energetic component of self, and the importance of healing across the four-body system. What I feel to explore with you is something that I've actually been exploring a bit myself recently, which is life force and vitality. And this really fits in with one of the core naturopathic principles and in our therapeutic order, which is the process of healing that naturopaths generally adhere to and prescribe by, is this idea of the healing power of nature. And this is really about getting us back to our foundational roots, getting back to seeing the whole picture and seeing how we as humans in form, but as our energetic selves as well, how we relate with nature and how in flow with nature we are, or where we are opposing nature and consequently causing ourselves harm, causing ourselves and contributing to states of dis-ease. So life force and vitality has a number of names. It's something that's very, very, very present in ancient texts. It's something that's very much talked about in traditional medicine and traditional approaches to healing. And it still is really present in alternative and more natural forms of healing in the present day. And there's different ways of understanding what this vitality or this life force, we'll call it life force for now, what this is and what it's comprised of. So in Chinese medicine, I'm sure you all would have heard of qi, and that's the way that they describe this life force. And that's like, it's the juices of life, it's the essence of life, it's the stuff that moves through the body, moves through the bloodstream, and we're going to talk a lot about the bloodstream and the flow of the blood today as part of our discussions, and through the meridians, and it's the stuff that allows us to be animated, and it's very much a measure of our state of health. It's very representative of how in flow with nature and with our, remember how I talked about that core of health that exists within all of us, and how in flow and in touch with that we are, and how well we are adhering to the requirements and the standards that are set by our own unique, internal, inherent state of health that's available to all of us, and where we're resisting that. And the life force is spoken about in Ayurvedic medicine a lot as well, and they refer to this as Agni. And the Agni is the fire. And again, it's the vitality, it's the life force. And in Ayurvedic medicine, the Agni is really situated in the digestive system, but still it's the energy in the body that is stimulating and that uses energy and is energy producing and is vibrant and is alive like fire. So we can see that it's spoken about a lot, and again you'll find it in all sorts of ancient texts that talk about this flow of life. And it's something that even nowadays in Chinese medicine and in Ayurvedic medicine, but in naturopathy as well, it's something that we attempt to measure. With each client that we see, part of what we go through our process of knowing how and figuring out how to work with a person is to measure their level of vitality, because that level of vitality is going to decide and really kind of focus and help us to hone in on the best way to work with an individual. So if you've got someone that comes and sees you and they sit in front of you and you can see that they're drained and they're slow and they're sluggish and there might be a bit of a funny colour and the eyes aren't sparkling, then you know that that person has lowered vitality. They're in a state of lowered vitality, in a state of lowered life force being available to them, and so we have to work with them more gently and in a suitable way that's going to very slowly and gently nudge them and nurture them to a state of being in health and being in a state of vitality. And then some people walk in the door and you can see they've got fire and their eyes are glistening and they're sparkling and they're ready, and you can hit those people generally, not always, this is very general, you can hit them a bit harder because they've got the strength, they've got the vitality, they've got the life force available to them to be able to take on the medicines and take on the prescriptions and take on the lifestyle requirements and the diet changes, and it won't knock them around in the same way that it would knock around a person who is in a lowered state of vitality. And that lowered state of vitality is often representative of a person being in a state of dis-ease, being in a state of disharmony to a degree, not being in harmony, again, with that natural, innate, inherent ability to exist in a state of health, which is very much about being, and we'll explore this, being in flow with nature and being in flow with life itself. So just to explore the concept of life force, and I'd like to bring it down to a very human level when we're talking about this stuff and relate it to you in terms that hopefully you'll be able to understand, and talk about the very physical, very physiological component of this life force and how it moves through the body and how it exists in the body and its role and how it flows, how it is actually made available on that physical level. So we'll start with that, and then eventually we're going to end up exploring and having a bit more of an idea about how we can utilize life force, life itself, this chi, the Agni, vitality, to exist in a state of harmony and in a state of health. So we're going to start really simply and just begin to understand the flow of this life, the flow of this life force in the physical body. So in Chinese medicine in particular, and I'm not a Chinese medicine practitioner, I've just read things and it's been included as part of my degree, but in no way am I a major in this area. This is just what I know of it. In Chinese medicine, there's a really strong focus on getting the life force to flow correctly and to flow in the direction and in the way that is most likely to induce a state of health. And in Chinese medicine as well, there's a really strong focus on purifying and cleansing and supporting the blood. The blood is a really big focus, tonifying the blood. And in Chinese medicine, it's really understood that if the blood is flowing strong, if the blood is clean, so is free from impurities, which we would consider to be toxins, undigested food particles, hormones, anything that can make its way into the bloodstream, because that's where everything does eventually end up, that if the blood is pure and the blood is clean, then the blood is able to flow properly, and when the blood is flowing properly, chi, life force, is able to flow through the body in the way that is going to induce life. It's going to bring about a state of health. And this is a really important and core understanding when we're exploring what is this life force and how do we work with it, how do we understand it, how do we utilize it and support it in a way that's going to bring about the best and most ideal expression of health for us. And it really is a really big focus for that does need to be on the blood, but it's more than that. It's about the focus on the liquid component of our makeup, who and what we are, because we know that we are 99% water. We know that we're more water than we are matter. We are more water than we are particles and atoms and electrons and neutrons and all of that stuff. We're more water than anything else. So it shouldn't come really as a surprise that where we're going to go with this is to understanding that a way to achieve the easiest and most inflow way to achieve a state of health is to take care of and nurture and support the water component, because that, when we support that water component of the body, we're supporting every cell in our body. We're supporting all of the processes in our body, because that water is everywhere. It's through everything. And something that we know as well is that the blood is water. It is water-based. It is a liquid component, and that liquid component contains red blood cells, it contains proteins, it contains white blood cells, it contains nutrients, it contains oxygen. The blood contains all of the nutrients and all of the things that we require for our body to exist in a state of health. So the blood, vital, really, really vital. And the flow of the blood is also vital, because if that flow is interrupted, if the blood is too viscous, is too sticky, is too full, contains particles that are harmful, is clogged up with cholesterol or whatever else is containing harmful substances, or is not flowing correctly, then our tissues, because we know as well that the blood reaches every single tissue in our body. It goes all the way from deep in the heart, through the arteries, through to the capillaries, right to the surface, to the outsides of our skin, and then it flows back up through the veins and to the heart. It's everywhere. It's in everything. So that blood really needs to be healthy, and that blood really needs to be flowing correctly, and really needs to be able to reach all of its target organs and all of its target tissues. And for that to happen, we need to really begin to understand the flow of the blood, how the blood flows, what causes and allows the blood to carry the nutrients that are required to all of our various cells. And we're going to begin to explore the fact that perhaps this life force, this vitality, this chi, is contained on the physical level within that blood, in that liquid component. So again, it just increases and emphasizes the importance of the health of the blood, and we'll break that down again and begin to look at the health of the water component of the blood. Because sure, the clarity is important, but we'll see that water component is really vital to the flow as well. And yeah, so that's a really essential, really essential in ensuring that the chi and the energy is flowing in the way that it needs to. So in ancient texts as well, what's understood or what is shared or suggested is that what is responsible for moving this blood, moving this life force, shifting this chi through the body, is the heart is a vital component of that. The heart is at the center, and the heart is essential in all aspects of the cardiovascular system, all aspects of flow and blood happening. But that there's something more than just the heart moving, the heart contracting and expanding, that's allowing this life force and allowing this chi to flow through the body. There's a suggestion that perhaps it's not just about this one organ, but about what's happening in the rest of the body that is facilitating and allowing this life force, this chi, the blood, to be moved through the body in the way that it is. And there's some research to suggest that this may be true, that it may be the case that there is more than just the heart contracting and expanding that's moving this blood through the body. And there's one man in particular, I've just forgotten his name, so I'll include his name in the description, who's really looking into this and really reading this and really looking into those old texts, because this is a lot of what Steiner talked about in the 1900s and a lot of what some of the masters have spoken about through time as well. Dwal Kul did a lot of, I guess, breakdown of a lot of these bodily processes and what's going on that physical level. So from that esoteric perspective, there's more than just the heart going like this. That's allowing that blood to be pumped. That's allowing that flow, the flow of the blood, the flow of the chi, the flow of the life force. And what we're beginning to understand, again, the heart is central and is a really vital component, but that there's something happening on a capillary level that's allowing this flow to be as strong as it is. Because something that I just want you guys to understand is that if we took all of the capillaries in our body and we laid them out end to end, then those capillaries would be long enough to circle the planet 3 times. That's enormous. That's an enormous amount of distance, an enormous amount of pumping, an enormous amount of energy that would be required to get that blood to move around the planet 3 times. And God bless you, heart, for doing the job that you do, but perhaps there's something else going on in the body on a very physical level that is allowing or supporting this process of moving the blood through the body, because that's constant movement. It's not like you just pump once a day and then you're done for the day. This is happening quickly and continuously and ongoingly. These bodies, they are smart. They've got it really sorted out. They're really intelligent and they continue to astound me. And I'm very, very blessed that my job gets to be about exploring how these bodies work, because it's fascinating. It really is. So what we're beginning to understand and what research is beginning to kind of depict and demonstrate is that at the capillary level, and this is a bit sciencey, so I'll break it down and make it as simple as I can for you. So there are proteins that line all of the cells and all of the capillaries and all of the veins in our body. And proteins by nature can either be hydrophilic or hydrophobic. And a hydrophobic protein repels water. It's like it's got a phobia of water. It's a really easy way to think of it. So wherever there's a hydrophobic protein, water is going to be repelled and pushed away and kept at a distance. But wherever there is a hydrophilic protein, hydrophilic proteins love water. And they attract water and draw water towards them. And these hydrophilic proteins line a lot of what is happening in our body. And that makes sense when you think about the fact that we are 99% water. It's not surprising that there are these hydrophilic linings and membranes and proteins kind of all found all the way through our body, attracting that water, keeping that water structured, keeping that water together so that it can exist in cells and not just go and spurt out all over the place, but have some kind of a form and a structure and something that keeps it kind of mobile but solid and strong in a way as well. And what we're beginning to understand is that at the capillary level, also at the artery and the vein level, but we're really talking about the capillaries here because this is where the really fascinating stuff happens. The inner lining of the capillary is made up of these hydrophilic proteins. And what we find and what we understand is that when water moves through, so if you've got like a tube like this that's lined in hydrophilic proteins, as water moves through that tube, there's this electromagnetic process that occurs where the ions, because there are positively charged and negatively charged ions in the water, are separated. So that hydrophilic protein is attracting the negatively charged ions to the surface of the capillary. And so what that means is that the positively charged ions are gathering in the center of that tube. And as those negatively charged ions are attracted to the surface, so the inner surface of the tube, it creates a gel. There's this gelling phase that happens. It creates this kind of slimy layer, this slimy membrane that protects the capillaries, that protects the veins, protects the arteries. But what this also does is by attracting those negatively charged ions to the lining of the capillary, the positively charged ions are pushed to the center, and those positively charged ions automatically and very naturally repel each other. And as that repelling happens, the water, because this is the water component, and the blood itself begins to move. So that force of that propelling moves the blood and allows it to start flowing. Because what we see at the capillary level, although there's a lot of oomph when the blood is released from the heart, by the time it reaches the capillaries, the blood slows way down. And this makes sense because the blood has to be going slow enough to be able to take up toxins and take up wastes, and also distribute oxygen and distribute nutrients to the various tissues. So at the capillary level, the blood, which is going out of this side of the heart, literally stops. It stops for a period of time, a short period of time, because we know our heart's beating pretty fast. But it stops for long enough to be able to take up toxins and distribute these, whatever is necessary and whatever is required for whatever tissue the blood has been sent to. And then somehow, by some miracle, the blood begins moving again. Somehow it finds the strength to go from being stopped to moving again, but not only to be moving again, but to be able to flow from the tip of your toe up your leg, all the way up your side and back into the other side of the heart. That's amazing. It's amazing. The body is incredible. So what we're suggesting is that possibly the heart is receiving extra assistance and extra support at that capillary level, so that the blood has the oomph and has the vitality and the strength to move back up the body and into the other side of the heart. And what I'm suggesting is that it is this process that is occurring at the capillary level, which I've just described, with the hydrophilic proteins attracting the negatively charged ions and causing the positively charged ions to meet in the center of the capillary and repel, that allows this movement, that allows this to keep flowing and allows this to keep moving. And I just want you to consider it. It's not hugely mind-blowing, but when we're considering the flow of energy and what the body's doing, it's pretty mind-blowing, because the next step in this is understanding that that process in itself at the capillary level, that process of being able to divide the positively and negatively charged ions, is enough to start some kind of movement. But what is it that's charging and allowing that process to occur? And I'm going to suggest here that it's the presence of life force. So it's that spark. It's the spark of life that allows this division and this separation to occur so that the blood can continue to flow. And I'll do another video after this one where we'll talk about how to utilize and how to support the influx of that life force to keep the life force itself, the chi itself, moving through our body and contributing to our level of health and our level of vitality. But I just wanted you guys to consider that, to consider what's going on in the body other than just this mechanical process of the heart beating that could be allowing this flow of energy to occur. And there's something happening even on that really minuscule, that microscopic level, with the water that is allowing this flow to happen. And that just highlights to us the importance of the water in our bodies and the importance of the structure of the water. Because if that water isn't structured correctly, then it does, like I was saying earlier, instead of it being able to be held firm by this electromagnetic process, instead of it being able to make up the inside and the outside of all of our cells, it degrades and goes and begins to look a bit more like a cancer cell. And that's another interesting part of this. And in an MRI scan, what the MRI scan is doing is it is measuring the makeup, so the structure of the water molecules in the body. And when the MRI scan detects that there is a breakdown of this structure of the water, then it detects that as being a tumor. And that's what we would call cancer. So that structure of the water is so important and is so vital in allowing the blood flow and in allowing the presence and the movement of life force and chi, Agni, whatever you want to call it, to be moving through the body and to be distributing life force throughout the body. But it's the presence of the life force itself which triggers and allows this process of the structuring of the water to occur. So where is this life force coming from? We end up with life force flowing through our body, but again, that process needs to be kick-started by the presence of some other form of life force. And this is where the healing power of nature is so vital and is so essential in all of our healing, because it is actually the life force or the electromagnetic field that occurs in nature which allows us to experience this flow of life force in our own physical bodies. And what we're beginning to understand is that, and what has been explored through various areas of research, is that when you've got like a tube with a hydrophilic protein layer lining it and you've got water in it, if you take that and you put it near a mobile phone or something that is emitting its own unnatural electromagnetic force, then it stops flowing. The structure of the water depletes and the water is no longer able to be separated in that positively and negatively charged kind of way. So that movement of the water through the tube stops. And what we're also beginning to see and understand, and something that's very supported by ancient understandings of our relationship with nature and how closely entwined with nature we actually are, is that when you take that same tube and you put it in the sun, it starts moving. And again, if you take that tube and you put it against the earth, it starts moving. If you take that tube and you contribute your own natural electromagnetic field to it and you hold that tube, the water starts moving again. So something in the life force that naturally occurs, natural life force, the life force in nature itself, in the sun, in the planet, in trees, in animals, in us, kicks off and contributes to the movement of life force through things and through our physical body. So that just highlights the importance of the healing power of nature. If we go and lay flat on the earth for 10 minutes a day, then we know that our life force is going to be circulating, our chi is going to be moving. If we go and be in the sun for a certain amount of time each day, again, that's going to kick-start the movement of this life force and contribute to our experience of health and our experience of vitality. So this just begins to unpack very traditional, very ancient ways of working with nature and understanding the physical body and how it relates with nature, by just bringing it back down to that really fundamental, foundational thing that is life force, that is this electromagnetic field which is naturally occurring, because it's the unnaturally occurring electromagnetic fields that disrupt the flow of the life force. And it's the naturally occurring electromagnetic fields that kick off the movement of that life force through the body, through the blood again, and allow that water to become structured in the body instead of it being kind of depleted and sagging and dripping and not moving in the way that it should or could be moving. So this just gives us something else to look at and something else to explore, and I'd like to keep unpacking this with you guys. Just take it away and have a ponder and see how that feels, and see if you can get a sense of what it is that I'm talking about. It may be overly simplified, it may be a bit confusing. I'm not sure. I tried to meet it somewhere in the middle where everyone would be able to understand, but just start looking at things in a little bit of a different way, and we'll explore how we can use this, how we can work with this to bring about a more healthful state of being.